17th of April. So this week seems to be a bit slow, huh? Or does that just feel like it? Because when you have a packed day, you don't have enough time in a day. And for creatives, we actually need 25 hours and 8 days. I know that the work week should actually be 4 days, but very productive days. Because we all seem to have forgotten that there is no such thing as life and work. There is only life, and work is a component of life. A very important one, of course, because without it, we can't do what we do, and that is live in our modern constructs and enjoy life. But who really does get to enjoy life when even the privileged get hit with misery? And I'm talking about what has happened in Sydney over the weekend in a very affluent suburb of Sydney. The terrible, terrible murders, the killings by a very disturbed male who seemed to have... Look, I don't know, but I'm going to continue reading now. News from ABC. The Assyrian community devastated, shocked and violated after Sydney's stabbing attack. And this attack was on a bishop. For many in Sydney's Assyrian community, the images of violence at the Christ, the Good Shepherd Church on Monday evening brought flashbacks of war. People are already traumatized, and on top of that, they have more trauma. This is how the world stays in its cycle of evil, perpetuating trauma. Trauma seems to be the right ingredients to cook a cauldron of global evil that more and more people seem to be drinking from. Anyway, Bondi stabbing offender's path from finding a new life to murdering 6 people after seizing schizophrenia medication. So, yes, medication, look, I don't know what to say. As I have said before, as I have said in the previous Daily Eggs, is that mental health affects everybody, because as long as we have a brain, I guess that is questionable in some people, but you've got to look at people like Trump and think, what's his mental health like? He doesn't seem very sane to me. This is a narcissist and exhibiting all the narcissist traits and characteristics, but also something else, a delusional. And surely people look at him and go, you're not quite sane. So why is this person not ever, asked, what's your mental health like? Why do we have people in the highest positions in the state of America, in the White House, who clearly aren't quite together? But when we have a murderer, that's when we start talking about mental health. When we should be talking about the mental health of the people who are leading the world's countries. I mean, do we really know what's going on in the 70-plus-year-old Putin's head? His delusions of grandeur, his short man syndrome. Sorry to say it that way, I hate it, but these are things I'm picking up from the ground threads like Reddit, Quora, etc. We do not ask about the mental health of the people who are supposed to be responsible and guiding others. So going back to the bishop's stabbing, teenager accused of church attack received good behavior bond for knife crime 3 months ago. Goodness me. Now I guess we have to actually ask, is the violence in movies and entertainment, is it now finally showing its... Because previously we have all said, excuse me, we grew up playing cops and robbers and stuff like that. We're not violent. But an interesting conversation Dwayne and I had yesterday is that the Gen Xers seem to be especially prone to anger or conflict or looking for it.
Yeah.
That's a conversation we need to expand. But it really got me thinking about that. Gen X people and older millennials seem to be always waiting for the conflict, so we're on the warpath before. However, so that's what we sort of make excuses for that at that time. Oh, back in our day, we used to do this, we used to do that. Dad used to belt me all the time. I'm fine. Well, no, no one's fine. Not even the dad who was belting. No one's fine. But what I am saying is that I think now it has trickled out into the psyche of the person. So before, maybe we were all playing, these things and no one wished to take it out into the real world. But what is happening now? What is happening now to the youth, to the males? Girls are now on a different, the more and more on the path of visible invisibility. I am seeing more and more tweens, they call it, the preteens, the tweens. They're preteens, they're children, and they love their cosmetics. And that is a deep dive coming up soon about what is actually happening to what they call Alpha, Generation Alpha, because Gen Z now, they're all in their 20s, still traumatized because they were born with trauma, into trauma, continuing trauma. The Gen Z people, I guess, when they came to yay, we're about to be adults soon, bang, here comes a pandemic to stop your day. Oh, God. But anyway, let's just talk about the mental health of people who go and murder. We're not talking about the mental health of people who start the tsunami. Continuing with news headlines from ABC. This AFP team spends hours trawling child abuse material. The bleed into life at home is unavoidable. Exactly what I have just been talking about. The trickle factor. Do you really think, and the AFP is Australian Federal Police, and they have to sit, I have read articles about this many, many times over the years. As a news journalist, I have to read everything. And there's this the psyche of a police person who has to sit there and look at the most disgusting things that human beings are capable of, damaged, vile, but they're diseased. So the AFP victim identification team are often parents themselves, tasked with solving some of the most grim and shocking crimes humans commit. For them, disconnecting from work is a necessity. So what happens when they're at work? They have to disconnect from emotions. And we don't think that that's going to have a lasting effect when police people, in order to do what they have to do, and that's to create order. And for us as a public, we view the police force as people there to protect us from each other. It hasn't seemed to work, so we have to readdress all of these. I do believe in groups that are there for the protection of other people. But let us understand where certain groups that are in our modern constructs now, where they began. And they began, as I have said in terms of history, the police force started in the United States of America based on the Royal Guard of England. And the Royal Guard existed to protect the royals. So then, who were the police force created to protect? But as I have also said, the police force is made up of incredible human beings who put themselves and their lives on the line to protect people from each other. And unfortunately, police people are also people, so they also have within their ranks people who want to punish other people and use their power to do so. That's not just the police force, it's everybody, everywhere. It's people with, it's males. I'm not saying this behavior doesn't exist in women. They're misogynist women. They're misogynists masquerading as women. No, I'm not talking about anything other than people who are born women, what we call cis women. By the way, the term cisgender, cis is a Latin prefix to say is what it is. So cis means to identify with what you were identified as. So, and why are these pronouns important? Because think about this for a moment. Are you happy being in the skin you are in? I know I am. I am so grateful to be a woman because I could not imagine having any other genitalia or a body that does not represent who I am inside me. And that is a way to look at how people who are born inside bodies that they do not understand, I'm trying to understand it from that point of view. It may seem selfish, but that is a way for people to understand each other. How would you like it if you were being bombed every day for your entire existence? Put yourself literally, mentally, emotionally. You can't do it literally, but do it mentally, literally. Visualize yourself in somebody else's shoes and go, whoa, okay, I'm going to have some compassion for this person. But for some reason, that's because everyone inside, what's going on inside everybody's mind, there are far too many people on this planet. There are far too many people on this planet who perhaps should not have been here. Woo, contentious thing, but maybe 500 years ago there should have been a cap on population growth. But the people who were the powers then, they understood that, ooh, with more people in this world, we get more free labor. We'll pay them, but it actually just keeps the algorithm, and back then they didn't call it algorithm, they called it class, as the hierarchy, you know, and all that. We still have it. We still have it. The class system isn't just something that is in Southeast Asian countries and called caste. The class system exists everywhere, even in the use of the word classy. I'm going to continue with the news headlines. Oh, gosh. Some opinion pieces are just in. Bypass takes trucks off Panolo's main street. That means nothing to anyone outside of Australia. Actually, it doesn't mean anything to me right now, so I should click on it, but we're going to continue. Want to see the Devil Comet at its brightest? If you miss it, you'll have to wait another 71 years. We will actually be sharing some more information on Sithara, which is a show we launched this week on Monday. It is about everything celestial, astronomy, astrology, and theology. So this particular, so it's Comet 12P Pons Brooks, aka the Devil Comet, is visible this week. And here's how to spot it. So I'll share that at the end. Well, let's start off with finding some good news out there, even though they call it the Devil's Comet. Like, you know, okay, that's really. I'm going to move on to more news headlines. Civil War imagines an America tearing itself apart, and the movie is proving equally divisive. And we do need to start with entertainment news too, actually, to find out what is happening, and we'll bring that to you on Friday's entertainment news, a roundup of what's happening worldwide in as many cinemas as possible, not just the Eurostream, which is Hollywood, which I love Hollywood. We love Hollywood. We are huge Eurostream pop culture fans. And even though my words are very strong about the Euro construct and the damages that we all live with within these colonized societies, I still do love what the Eurostream has been able to do with a lot of what it has done. There's a lot of good to be found in everything. Oh gosh, Assange, oh dear. Assange's family in extreme distress as US responds to UK court's extradition demands. Julian Assange's bid to avoid extradition to America is dealt a blow, as lawyers for the United States provide the assurances about his treatment that a London court had demanded. Yeah, I don't know. Isn't it crazy that all he did was he founded something that told the truth. Whistleblowers in this world. Isn't that crazy? Truth telling in this world is a crime, punishable by people it's crazy. It is insane. That seems to be all the adjectives I can ascribe. So Civil War, that headline, don't worry. There's not a new Civil War. The world is at civil war. We say civil war like we're all separate from each other. We think civil war is something that happens to another country over there, over that side, particularly in the brown and black countries. Civil war is what is happening on this planet right now. And this is about a movie. Tasmania is riddled with hundreds of fading and vanishing towns. Where did they go wrong? This is all from ABC. We do have the links there on our captions or where we get our news from. And these are news sources written by the good journalists of all of these outlets that I do read the headlines from. I'm going to actually move on to Sydney Morning Herald because I have been bypassing this story about what has been happening between personalities of high-profile personalities, media personalities, but also people from government. And a woman by the name of Brittany Higgins was raped, and her accuser has taken the journalist and the woman who was raped. They've taken the rapist and the rapist actually took them to court for defamation. I did say I was going to do a deep dive, but I want to read this one article from Sydney Morning Herald, written by Kate McClement and Angus Thompson. Lehrman's lies and Lisa's angry text flag possible new skirmishes. Oh gosh, this is an ongoing saga. It should not be. A person raped, and that is all that should be said. And as I had said yesterday, males seem to have a problem understanding consent. So even when a woman is struggling and has said no, and has said she doesn't want this, they still seem to think that that means, ooh, she's playing hard to get. How do I know this? I know this from personal experience. I was 13 and I knew that if I struggled. So that's the story for another time, but long-term viewers do know this about my background story, and in various lives and shows I have shared, I have nothing to hide. Why should I be ashamed of something somebody else did to me? They're the abusers. Not me. I didn't ask for it. I was 13. How could I have? No other woman, no woman asks for it. I'm going to continue reading this article. At 10:48 on a Sunday night in June 2023, Spotlight executive producer Mark Llewellyn's phone pinged. Llewellyn. How do I pronounce that name? It's a double, Llewellyn. Oh, anyway. It was a few... I don't always know how to pronounce these Anglo names because a lot of them are Anglo-German. Of course, you do know that there's no such thing as Anglo-German. My apologies. Anglo being, of course, the etymology of Anglo is Angel, and that was a Germanic village. There was a Germanic tribe, one of the three that took over the British Isles and chased the indigenous British out. And then what the German tribes then became the Anglo-Saxons, and then became England of today, including the royal family. So, it was a furious text message from Lisa Wilkinson announcing their decades-long friendship was over. "We go back 40 years, Mark, and I really struggle to believe you did this to me," texted the Network 10 journalist. "I never expected loyalty, but at least I expected decency." And this is from Lisa Wilkinson. Now, I should have a disclosure about Lisa Wilkinson. Lisa Wilkinson is one of my original role models. I was a teenager when she was the editor of Dolly magazine and Cleo magazine. And join me next time, not this week, but in another episode coming up of the Sandhya Show, when I talk about a certain time in Australia when our television, our media, our magazines were It is because of Lisa Wilkinson is why I wanted to be a journalist. And she, as I said, she was the editor of Dolly magazine, and which was amazing. And Cleo, started by the legendary, iconic Ita Buttrose. I'll talk about that another time. But Lisa Wilkinson, I got to meet her because when I was a journalist, I still am a journalist, I was interviewing Peter Fitzsimon, who is her husband, and Peter Fitzsimon is an ex-Wallaby, but more renowned as an author. And I was interviewing him, and Lisa came into, because I was at their place, and I was just like, so disclosure, huge fan of Lisa Wilkinson, and she had, because I always say choose your role models wisely, especially if you're younger. Choose your role models wisely. See where they go. And I love that a woman that I have looked up to since I was a teenager, so for 40 years, is still a woman to be looked up to. Choose your role models wisely. I'm going to continue with this story. Wilkinson had just watched Seven's tell-all interview with former Liberal staffer Bruce Lehrman, who had launched defamation action against her and Ten's The Project over an interview in which Brittany Higgins accused Lehrman, without naming him, of raping her in Parliament House. In her text, Wilkinson accused Llewellyn, can you just get the pronunciation right? I never know really how to pronounce some of these Anglo-Latin names, because if it's not French origin, it's Germanic origin, it's all very confusing. And of course, if it's Celtic origin, I love Celtic origin names. Excuse me, I do seem to be interjecting a lot of humor into very serious issues here. This is the news of the Daily Egg. It's news and views entwined. In her text, Wilkinson accused Llewellyn of painting a viciously warped picture of her and the colleagues at the project. Now, the project has been deemed problematic at times, and I don't quite understand why. Sometimes, I'm not sure if Waleed Ali, the host, is still the host, but sometimes he can be a bit rigid because he is a man, and also, I guess, I'm not sure, does his I don't think so. I think he is fairly impartial. He's very cool. He's a journalist. He's a he's a guitarist. He's a very someone else I also respect. But I think perhaps there is some rigidity, or is that what I am actually now feeling because of what I read? Wow, you also have to be very careful of where you get your information from. Media can definitely shape your views. God, what an understatement and what an obvious thing I am saying here. Like, duh, Sherlock. Anyway, more importantly, just over an hour after the program was broadcast, Wilkinson alerted Llewellyn to Spotlight's possible contempt of court by broadcasting material that could only be used in Lerman's criminal trial, which had collapsed in October 2022 due to juror misconduct. As I said, I will be doing a deep dive of this. It seems to be continuing, and it really is coming down to a war between males and women. Llewellyn. So I'm saying, okay, well, there you go. So it can't be that hard. There's a lot of people who say they can't pronounce names of multicultural origin. All you have to do is look it up and try. See how easily it can be done? So just, if you find a name and you come across it and it happens to be of a multicultural, origin, look it up and find out what it is. So it's not, my name isn't Sandhya, it's not Sandhya. All right, it's not Sandhya, it's Sandhya. And if you can't say Sandhya will do. I'm going to move on to headlines of the Sydney Morning Herald. Again, the major stories with the Sydney Morning Herald is about the defamation case, and lies and angry text message flag possible new skirmishes. So as I said, I will be doing a deep dive of this. There's an analysis of political leadership here. The danger to Australia's social cohesion is out in the open, and it's live streamed. Is that Parliament? I am certain they're talking about what happens in Parliament, because it's a joke. It's an absolute joke. The yelling, not just Australian Parliament, everywhere, every single Parliament we know. So, oh goodness me, continuing with that defamation case. Another headline from Sydney Morning Herald, Lerman spotted at ex-Chief Justice's Point Piper mansion. Point Piper is a very exclusive suburb in Sydney. Bruce Lerman cancels conference appearance, seeks refuge with police. On Monday, rapist Bruce Lerman sheltered from media at Gosford Police Station, which is up on the Central Coast. The next day, his appearance at a controversial conference was cancelled. What is it? Another article, Reynolds breaks silence over Lerman judgment, vows to pursue Higgins. Holy cow, this is a war on women. The former coalition minister has vowed to proceed with her... Well, there, I take that back. Has vowed to proceed with her own civil case against Brittany Higgins and her partner David Shiraz. Holy cow. I have stated and I have said, and I am certain, we need to stop doing this sisterhood thing, and if any one of us say anything about women, we're against the sisterhood. Pure womanist here. I don't call myself a feminist anymore. I have been a feminist. No, I am a feminist. I was born a feminist, whatever you think a feminist is. Just merely understanding my power as a woman, as a girl. I knew who I was as a girl. I stopped calling myself a feminist about 2 years ago, and I had started calling myself a feminist from the age of 11 when I went to the Suva City Library, which was a font of incredible information. It was filled with the world's knowledge. And that's where I found out what a certain word that I had just been called meant. And I was like, why would that be an insult to me, to be called a name that is another name for female genitalia, starting with C, a four-letter word that seems to make everyone reach for their smelling salts. But I quite enjoy that word, said in very honorable ways. I do not use that word in derogatory ways. But I did find out what feminism was, and I was like, yes, this is who I am. This is what I am. But unfortunately, feminism seems to be just another tool in the patriarchal capitalist constructs, and seeking independence via look, feminism as we know it today is a Euro woman construct, and it was started to and for the right to support, and it was for the rights of Euro women, and the template for it does not suit the rest of us, not multicultural women, and not at all women. The template for feminism needs to change. They keep talking about a fourth wave. what is it I still see? It is led and helmed by Eurostream women and Eurostream template women. So it's not going to change. But within that, as a woman, as a woman, I am woman. I don't need any other label on me to describe who I am. I am woman. As a woman, I recognize misogyny amongst women, and that is the ones who have been truly skewed and twisted by the patriarchy. And a lot of them tend to actually be misandrists as well. And that's not what we want. If you're a feminist, you cannot be a misandrist. And people get that conflated, that feminism means the same as misandry. Misandry is the hatred of man, and there are men who hate men, okay? Misogyny is the hatred of women, and we get the gyno, and that's the feminine term for women. But women also are misogynists, and a lot of women have felt that burn. So there you go. Reynolds is going to now take Higgins. My gosh. So I'm continuing on with crime, shocking attack on TikTok bishop. What's that? TikTok bishop. So the bishop that was stabbed at the Good Shepherd Church is called the TikTok bishop. Bishop Mari Emmanuel was preaching to a small congregation, but thousands were tuning in via a live stream. Within minutes, they were arriving by the carload. Whoa. And this is why there was a riot, and it was between the crowd and police. Continuing, weapons history, and more headlines from Sydney Morning Herald. Weapons history of teenage attacker revealed. The 16-year-old boy, 16, 15, now he's 16. Where is that story? 16-year-old boy at the center of a counter-terrorism investigation was previously suspended from school for carrying a knife and last year faced a weapons charge. And this is what I was talking about. So both ABC and Sydney Morning Herald are running these stories, but one says one's 15, one says one's 16, one says it was 3 months ago, one says it was last year. We're in April now, 3 months ago is still this year. So I'm a little bit confused about where the facts are on the story. But this is why you should get your facts from as many news outlets as possible and really, really seek the unbiased ones. It's difficult because it is difficult. So maybe, and don't settle for what suits your comfort zone narrative as well. Okay, don't settle for that. If you find an article that's making you itch a bit, read it. You have to. You can't just get information that suits what you are comfortable with. That's not how the world works. We are all separate people with autonomy. There's a lot of noise outside. Give me a moment, please. Oh, thank you, darling. I'm going to move on from the Sydney Morning Herald because not sure, but just a few more. So under city life categorization, court rules on another Northern Beaches restaurant saga. It all seems to be happening in the eastern and northern suburbs. It's all imploding, or southwest, actually. Wakeley is where the TikTok bishop was stabbed. Okay, so business default soar as house prices here outpace the globe. Australian house prices are outperforming most of the world, even after inflation, but pressure is growing on the business sector. Most people will be homeless soon. Now, homelessness is a separate category in the Sydney Morning Herald. Marija, or Maria, that's spelled with a J, Marija, was homeless at 15. At 22, she bought a house. The dream of stable... How? I might have to read this out. And more headlines. The chart that shows how happy you are just as long as you're old enough. Oh, great. So, you know, happiness, they're saying here, in their opinion pieces, that happiness is related to how old you are. Great. That's because the older you get, the more you realize, whoa, you won't be able to find happiness out there. You really, really have to do something about working on it here, because the world as we know it is actually falling to bits. You shouldn't. You stay fast. You stay strong. Stand tall. Stand within yourself. Make sure that every cell in your vessel, that is the human body, is occupied with you. Your brain, your words. I'm going to move on because, frankly, the Sydney Morning Herald is starting to really depress me. NITV, let's see what it says here. The Alice Springs curfew has been extended. There has been turmoil in Alice Springs, which is in the Northern Territory. Alice Springs is where people touch down, the airport there, and it's predominantly a First Nations town, but not a community. And there has been a lot of strife. So the curfew imposed on youths in Parta, my apologies, I should have actually practiced how to say this, Partway, which is the First Nations name for Alice Springs, and perhaps I shouldn't try and pronounce it without actually practicing it. As I said earlier, it's not too hard to find out, but I cold read news just so it's as much of a surprise to me as it is to you, whatever it is that is the news of the day. Well, this curfew imposed on youth has been extended by 6 days following emergency meetings between Northern Territory authorities. Originally imposed for a 2-week period following unrest in the town, the curfew prohibits anyone under 18 from being in public in the town between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. The extension coincides with the remainder of the school holidays in the territory and was announced by the Chief Minister Eva Lawley on Tuesday afternoon. Despite warnings earlier this month that the curfew is possibly illegal, Lawler decided on the extension following a meeting of the Territory Emergency Management Council. Local elders last week expressed their displeasure with the implementation of the curfew. We weren't consulted, we were not aware of what was happening, said a spokesperson from the Strong Grandmothers group from the Central Desert region. It's inappropriate, it's insulting, and making us feel that we're not part of the system or the solution. Jared Sharp, Principal Legal Officer at North Australian Aboriginal Justice Agency, said his organisation was extremely disappointed with the curfew and dismissed its effectiveness. I agree. It's just going to criminalise incredible, vulnerable young people. We don't think this is a productive way forward. It's a band-aid solution. It's a retrograde step. It's not going to make the community safer. I agree. However, some federal politicians, including Linda Burney and Marion Skimger, said the curfew provided a necessary circuit breaker. Can you just look up Linda Burney for me? Burney. Read some things out for me about Linda Burney. I'm going to read another article from NITV, and this is...
She's an Australian politician who is in the Australian Labor Party, member of the Australian House of Representatives, representing Barton since the 2016 federal election.
Barton in Australian Capital
the
Territory.
Minister for Indigenous Australians.
Right, so...
Ministry.
Right, so she is Indigenous, yes?
The first woman who identifies as Aboriginal to serve in that position.
So, this is a politician, not all, and I will say this as a person of multicultural, and I understand this about even my racial grouping, whatever that is. What is race? But I do understand that within our racial groupings are people who are in solidarity, who are not in solidarity with it. Having said that, there are people who also think that we do need to get ahead and surpass everything and how we look at it. But there are people amongst us who are also, sadly, traitors, who are misanthropes, who are against against people full stop. I'm going to read another article from NITV. Thought calls for government to act on deaths in custody and child removals. And Senator Lydia Thorpe is quite a voice of the people. And disclosure, I am a fan. I think that at times her passion overrides, unfortunately, the sense required in playing the strategic game required. That's why I could not get into politics. You have to be strategic. Even the good people have to be strategic. Even the good people of this world have to manipulate in some ways, in good ways, but not manipulate. I shouldn't use that word. That's not what it is. Oh, gosh. Parliamentary crossbenchers have united to back Senator Lydia Thorpe in calls for the federal government to address First Nations deaths in custody and child removals. Now, Senator Lydia Thorpe is one of the few voices who is very, very unafraid to stand up and voice what needs to be voiced. She is a woman who needs the support of every other woman. Unfortunately, I've seen other women who don't like her simply because what? You don't have to like someone to understand that you need to back this person, you need to support this person. The world's not going to change unless we understand certain fundamentals about this. You don't need to like someone. We also need to understand how emotions play everything, and we have let emotions, the bad ones, to dictate the decisions like people in power. Politics is decided by emotions. Elections are decided by emotions. Going back to this article, the group are urging the government to implement all recommendations from the 1991 Royal Commission into Aboriginal deaths in custody. In 1991, they were still using the word Aboriginal, which is a word, yes. I'm still not quite sure, because there are differing opinions on this, whether Indigenous, Aboriginal or First Nations is the correct terminology. I prefer First Nations. So Aboriginal deaths in custody, and the 1997 Bringing Them Home report on the stolen generations. I will do a deep dive. For those of you who do not understand what I am talking about, if you are international and you don't know what happens to the First Nations people, especially of Australia. I mean, we don't even talk about the First Nations people of the state of America. First, we need to get reparations for them, and as well as the people who were stolen from their continent, taken to work on stolen land by themselves. So I'm going to now move to SBS, see what's here. On SBS, we have the paramilitary group Israel and the opposition want Australia to label as terrorist. United in devastation, over $500,000 donated for Bondi stabbing victims' families. Look, I'm a bit confused about why, except for, of course, the security guard and the foreign national young woman who was killed. There was one male, Faraz Tahir, Pakistani refugee, who was murdered. He was a security guard. He had just started working there, and apparently he died defending. But he wasn't he was the sole male, and the rest of the victims were women, 5 women. And one was the daughter of one of Australia's richest male people, and the rest all are from very affluent suburbs of Sydney. That doesn't mean that they themselves are mega rich, but to live in these suburbs, you've got to have a lot of money to pay the rents or the mortgages or just to exist there. So why has that happened? I'm not saying that solidarity and support should not be shown. And I do hope a lot of that money goes to the family of the murdered foreign national, a Chinese woman, is she from Taiwan? But this is quite interesting for me as to why such a thing has, Verified fundraisers set up by the loved ones of victims Ashley Good, Jade Young and Faraz Tahir have received an outpouring of money and supportive comments on online donation platform GoFundMe. Oh, look, this story is very distressing. Good was a 38-year-old first-time mother who died protecting her 9-month-old baby who was seriously injured in the attack and is still in hospital. A fund for Good's daughter Harriet and husband Dan has reached over $450,000 in donations. I don't know what else to say without sounding quite callous. But as a woman of multicultural, as a woman of color, I am seeing the differences in reactions to how if someone unexpected gets such terrible tragedies before people who are unexpected, then people, I guess, rally more in solidarity. But when it happens to people they expect, like people of color or First Nations people, then the compassion is not the same. And I don't know what to say. I do know that First Nations people must be looking at all of this, because First Nations people of this land are in solidarity with the people of the Middle East who are being besieged by genociders. They are. And I have seen some people for First Nations background who say, why? They don't care for us, and that is true. Both seem... No, that's not true. That is not true. That is not true. My apologies for that. It is the collectives that would have you believe that they are not for others, but individuals are for others. It's just that the individuals tend to align themselves with collective groups, whether they be borders and racial groupings or religion, that turn everybody against each other. I cannot read any more about the Westfield Bondi Junction stabbings. We're going to go into Radio New Zealand just to read some headlines. Whew. By the way, currently in the Middle East, Dubai and Oman, they're currently being flooded. Deluge floods Dubai airport, causing chaos. Flights into Dubai International Airport have been diverted after a storm hit the region. I've actually seen somewhere else that Oman too is being affected by a lot by the deluge, and I love Oman. It is one of my favorite countries in the entire world. Look, this is New Zealand's money must innovate. Reserve Bank considers a digital dollar. Oof. Wow, we're not slowly, we're rapidly going into a cashless society. Cash kept us honest. Cash, well, what did I just say? What did I just say? No, actually not honest. Cash makes us feel secure. Digital, nothing is secure there. Ask those of us who've lost money in superannuation. Anyway, money pours into consultant bills at police. The government is pushing to cut spending, but money was still going out of non-core areas in the latest figures. New Zealand Public Service job cuts, and I read some headlines about that yesterday. That's like a lot. In order to save money, the government is going to cut jobs so that people can be poor as long as the government isn't poor. I'm going to move on. So Pacific News, let the games begin. Coalition negotiations underway in Honiara, and I'm still reading from Radio New Zealand. Call for justice after suspected murder of Fiji's LGBTQI plus community member. It is way past time we ask ourselves just what kind of society we are with so much violence and patriarchy in our country. And I will read the story of that wonderful quote. The Coalition on Human Rights is calling for justice following the suspected murder of a 19-year-old gender diverse person in Fiji. Ah, gosh. So who is the spokesperson right now? Nolene Nambu-Livo, Executive Director of DIVA for Equality and member of the Fiji NGO Coalition on Human Rights, said a group of people has taken the life of a 19-year-old, subjecting them to extreme sexualized torture, violence, and indignity. It is way past time we ask ourselves just what kind of society we are with so much violence and patriarchy in this world. She says, they say, my apologies, in our country. This has happened in Fiji. Fiji, that paradise, that the hospitality organizations that are led by expatriate people that aren't run by the people of their own country, run by expatriates who don't really care what's happening on the ground as long as they do what their job tells them to do, and that is to bring other Euro people into the country so that the economy can flourish. No, we know firsthand how easily and quickly tourism is impacted when a pandemic shuts our borders. But when war happens, no, let everyone just enjoy. It doesn't affect everybody, especially not the people who need to go and be treated like royals by the people of that little island. So they don't want to actually tell you what's happening in Fiji, but Fiji is not quite the paradise the hospitality organizations will have you believe. It is a paradox. But in that same token, and in that paradox, are people who persevere, who are resilient, who live every day on tenterhooks, on walking on eggshells. I cannot read out the rest of the news headlines. What I am going to do is I'm actually going to move into Studio K so that we can continue talking about other things. If you want your news from an impartial newsreader, then please go elsewhere. If you want transparency and truth, well, this is where you should be getting your news source. This is your source of news. And I, at the moment, cannot read, apologies for the blackout here, I cannot read my own news. I don't have time. Between Dwayne and I, we do the job, maybe an entire production house. So I don't have the time to write and source news stories. And this is where your help comes in, because with your help we can then actually get contributors from all over the world who give us the news for the Daily Egg from the source on the ground. But we need to pay these people, many of them who will be putting their lives on the line to get the real news happening. With your help, because we are looking for sponsorship, and I understand that it is fairly contentious to come on board with me, because with us, because I don't hold back in what needs to be said. And for people that's like, ooh, loose cannon, I am not a loose cannon. I know exactly what I am saying. I am on everyone's side except the side that's called genocide. And that is actually anthropocide. It is the killing of our own selves. We are given a finite life cycle. Why? Why so much of it spent worrying about our own safety and our lives? Why do so many people with their own finite life cycles spend so much time trying to cut short, that too, shut court and cut short the lives of others? Look, I'm going to have to just end this Daily Egg talking about better things. What better things? Well, there's lots of better things in this world. There's lots of good things in this world. We're proof. You're proof. If you're here, if you're watching, you are proof that you know that this world needs to change. And as I said earlier, and as I have said before, and as we say, if you want to change, you have to change yourself first. The first step to changing anything is changing yourself. You cannot expect the world to change if you do not take the first steps in changing. Whew. A terrible thing has happened in Fiji was the last news item I read. This is why I had to actually give up news journalism. I started off as a news journalist, although my career started off in radio. But as a news journalist, I couldn't, because what constitutes as good news for news journalists is all the tragedies of the world, because news headlines keeps it going for a long time. Tragedies really, really sell papers. We don't have papers anymore, hardly. And I do miss the broadsheets back in the time. Do you remember back when, and I have said that I'm going to be talking about back in the day when Australia's media, when our television shows, our movies were amazing, and broadsheet, our newspapers were like,
yeah.
So if people on trains, etc., you'd have to sort of,
yeah.
It was great, and they had all these wonderful sections. But I don't know, I don't buy newspapers anymore.
I think they still have them, but they don't print the runners. And I think it's
sensible, because we do need to actually get away from paper until we find a way to completely recycle the paper we already have in the world.
Yeah.
But I do love paper.
Yeah.
I have kept articles.
I've got a lot of paper.
Well, you're an artist. You've got to have paper. I have kept a lot of articles from 30 years ago. Well, 30, 40 years ago. Well, a lot of them also are clippings, but they're about me. But I do keep newspapers from back then with news of the time.
I think you have a better selection than the Fiji Times archives.
Yes, I do. We went through the Fiji Times archives when we lived in Fiji.
Shocking.
For a few months. And we will be bringing that story to you on a show dropping this week. The first show starts on Thursday at 7 p.m. Please do join us for that. It's not a live, but it is a live show. So stay tuned. Not stay tuned. You can see that it's already scheduled on our channel homepage and on the TV guide. And we will be talking about a wonderful, wonderful trip, because the truth, my friends, the truth is out back. So, what are some views? What are some views, darling? And there's something very interesting you said earlier about non-creatives are taking over the creative world. And that is, of course, what is happening with everything.
Well, with the platforms that are out there, it's possible for everyone to...
Which is supposed to have created equality, right? And but it's not. It hasn't created equity, because creatives now are finding that we are actually the bottom of in a creative space. Actual creative people are at the bottom, unless of course you have the privilege, and with that privilege you need to have the money. Because I will talk more in another episodes of other shows about public relations, and that I think is something I will share on the Sandhya show, which is on Thursdays.
I think it has a lot to do with funding as well. So artists don't have the funding, because we study art. You know, we go and study these things. And the people who are at the top right now have studied science and law, and they've made lots of money, and they can now sit down, chill back, and just create whatever the hell they want. While artists are still struggling to get to that level where they can have that kind of funding to do that. So right now, most creatives you see have a doctorate or a degree in something else.
Especially,
You know, books that are being released now are written by lawyers, and that's fine. It's great. They've been suppressed from when they were young. They were told that they can't do these things. They have to make the money to be an artist. But artists who have gone through the proper stages of, being an artist are suffering. Still, the artist struggle is a real thing.
we do need to talk about this further. Either it's for one of our podcasts, Radio Fly is the main one, but we do need to talk about this further because it is very. Look, yes, sure, because they got suppressed, right, when they were younger, and their parents, particularly if they're people of migrant parents, or second generation, third generation Australians, whose parents made such incredible sacrifices. In many cases, some of them were refugees, having to withstand terrible journeys across terrible seas to get here just to escape the tyranny of their homeland. And they come here, and then they have children, and they want their children to then really establish themselves, not have to struggle. Parents look at their children and go, why after all the sacrifices we've made, why are you then putting yourself in a position to struggle? Which is wrong and right at the same time. No parents really, well, unless parents in general, parents who are parents do not want their children to struggle. Excuse me, we have some noise in the back. This is just human life. We live in a city. But also, I do know parents who have managed to do really well, the ones who don't struggle, the ones who come to Eurostream construct countries, with some privilege, and I mean with their own education and with their own money, and they all usually go into IT. Yeah. Most people, let's just say from India, come here and go into IT. They make their money, and then they encourage their own children to seek creativity, but also then they realize it's not fruitful for a person of multicultural to have a full-time career in the creative sector because we don't get the opportunities. And I say that as someone who has been working as a full-time creative since I was 18. I have chosen and I had privilege, and you have as well. And so you and I, as in you have chosen to follow your skill set. We were given skills, and I think it would have been a terrible betrayal, or it's greedy to have these skills and then want to go and do other things. But I just need to clear my throat, so give me a moment, please. I'm turning the audio off. I do think, what do I mean by that? Again, I guess we have to unpack this longer because they are children who've been dutiful and they've fulfilled their parents' wishes. Then they get burnout. Then they become stand-up comedians or authors or etc. As Dwayne said, these people who've been forced, people of multicultural who, well, they go and do the right thing. They go to the Euro constructs, and all the while hating the Euro constructs. This is what I also don't get. A lot of these people write stories about the tyranny of the Euro constructs, and yet they have gone to the very Euro construct to get the letters behind after their names to prove that they are viable in the Euro constructs. Yeah. I'm very confused about this. They want to abolish these constructs, but also perpetuate them by upholding them, by continuing to sustain these constructs with their own selves. I get very confused about things. Why aren't we building multicultural universities? Why? The Black American people, have created for themselves historically Black, what is it? HB. There's historically Black Howard University, HBU, etc. But there's quite a few. Yeah. Spelman was founded for women. It's fantastic. I love that Angelina Jolie, disclosure, love her. Her daughter Zahara, she's gone to this university. Zahara, it was, is from an African country. So so I'm just going back to what you were saying, and we do need to talk about this in a longer capacity. So, an episode of Radio Fly about what's happening, because that is also skewing the algorithm. When you have people who are then able to, because creatives are constantly working. Creatives are constantly working, and because we're older, we do remember a time, well, I do. I remember a time when it was possible to actually earn money, because I have. We earn money from our creative skill sets. But for some reason, not enough kudos is given to the creative who has chosen to stick to this path of creativity without deviating to fund the creativity. Or is that just seen as like, well, no, that's stupid, you should do that? Some people will look at it and go, well, that's stupid. It does take a lot of courage. It does take a lot of grit and determination and understanding that, sure, you may never get to the top of anything or accolades, but get to a point where you are satisfied with what success is to you. Of course, if your ego is fueling it, then it's not your artistry that is guiding you. It is your ego. If it is fame you are after, and that is what a lot of people are after. Their artistry is not their art. Their merit comes from the M-E in merit, me, that's the world we live in. And I'm talking about that, continuing talking about celebrity in the Sandhya show on Thursdays around 12 o'clock. I have scheduled this Thursday show for 12 o'clock, so join me there when I'm talking about Celebrity Part 2. I'm continuing with that. So we were talking about creatives now, There's an interesting thing. You applied for a job, because you still got to apply for jobs whilst also creating your thing. So this is why we are calling for sponsors and patrons, etc. Come on board with us, because we want to just fully focus our energy and our creative skills on doing what we do. We are creating a television channel. We have created a television channel. Thank you, YouTube. We love you. Really, thank you. Seriously. What a platform. And this is another conversation we had. What was YouTube created for? Everybody is what you said. And I thought, well, it should have been created just for creators, but that's not fair. That's not equality. However, that is equity. Now, equity and equality, people want equality without understanding what that really means. That just means we all get the same size box. No, that's not what we want. Because we are all of differing heights, literally and psychologically, and in society as well. What we need are boxes that help us all see things equally. The equity has to come from the foundations so that we can see with equality, see the same things. No one is struggling. Why are people struggling? And it's getting worse. The wars are escalating. It's not just what's happening in the Middle East. China too has made their moves. Oh gosh. So as we said yesterday, World War II doesn't actually seem to have finished. It is just it's a continuing chapters of World War II that's what's happening. So we're either coming to an end or the start of another volume. And they'll call this one World War III. An interesting thing we had also laughed about the other day, well, not really laughing, because as I said, Dwayne was applying for jobs, because we still have to do that, whilst also applying ourselves to our main jobs. We've got to apply for jobs in order to pay our bills, because that stuff, that's not getting better. Every single email is either, well, we have to raise your bills now because everything is getting expensive. Why is everything getting expensive? Why? Because of profits. People want profits before people. The world should unanimously and should unite in asking for a period of no profit. But that's not going to happen, because the people who are in power are the people who want the profit. Anyway, Well, folks, I think that is what I am going to just finish up with. Why we're wearing blue, because it is the last day of Navratri, or not really the last day, but it's the last day of the colors. Again, as I said, I'm not religious, but I like honoring the science that is this religion. And also, I do love how the colors do mean something very scientifically, and how the colors are, relating to our neural pathways. I talked about that in yesterday's The Daily Egg. Blue, for this day, the color is seen as blue, sky blue, royal blue. It is to represent the universe. And that is why I'm wearing these earrings, because I feel that they're so... They represent the universe. We were talking about AI and how even that is not quite as... we called it assisting Indians, and we'll explain why we call it that in tomorrow's The Daily Egg, or maybe in a new show dropping shortly. Maybe. So stay tuned for that. We would love you to please join us. We would love you to please support us in it's not a quest, it's an endeavor. It is we have set it in motion. We're not waiting for anything to set it in motion. We have set it in motion. We are going. Our train, our plane, our automobile, whatever the vehicle we are, it's going, it's moving. We'd like you to join us. Join us for this, and I'm going to use that word, journey. Join us for this journey. And also, while you're here, if you're watching and you haven't done so, please do subscribe. We'd deeply appreciate it. We'd like to get to 1,000 subscribers. Why not for numbers? We get it. We're not going to be one of those people who gets millions and millions of account followers, and that's fine. That's cool with us. We just need to sustain our life, our livelihood. This is our work, yes, because we put ourselves on the line in some ways to bring the world's truth to you and unpack things that need to be unpacked. We are voices joining the world's voices and saying, seek truth, seek transparency. And you'll find that here on the Lives of Our Days. Please subscribe. It is now time for us to go, because the most important part of the show is here. It is the Daily Egg for... what day is it? Wednesday, April 17th, 2024. Thank you very much for being here. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and stay tuned to all the shows. Our channel homepage has got all the schedules and all the playlists. Enjoy. Thank you. See you later. Bye.